Bonsoir. Over the last number of days, an extensive degree of effort has been expended by RCMP in the search for Miles Sanderson, who was one of the primary suspects in relationship to the stabbings and the tragedies coming out of James Smith Cree Nation. Earlier today, the RCMP were able to identify and locate Miles Sanderson. They were able to detain him, apprehend him, and place him into custody. Shortly thereafter, Miles Sanderson was pronounced deceased at a hospital in Saskatchewan. There are a number of ongoing investigations, both into the circumstances surrounding Mr. Sanderson's death, as well as the stabbings that occurred in the James Smith Cree Nation. Our thoughts immediately turn to the families who, despite the measure of relief, are still feeling pain and anguish and loss. And we will continue to do in the federal government everything that we can to support them. I want to take a moment again to thank the RCMP for taking all of the measures that they can to provide support to the families, mobilizing a number of different units. And they will continue to be there along with other levels of government, both locally with Indigenous leadership, as well as in the province of Saskatchewan. We remain in constant contact with all of those levels of government. And I also want to take a moment to thank Canadians who provided information to the RCMP so that they could, again, conclude the efforts of locating Miles Sanderson today. Donc, pendant la dernière journée, il y a une grande opération pour l'arrestation de Miles Sanderson. Le GRC ont obtenu son location et après ça, ils sont déclarés décédés à un hôpital à Saskatchewan. Il y a un nombre des enquêtes qui sont en progrès et qui sont dirigées par la GRC et même des autres services policiers pour comprendre toutes les circonstances qui a contribué à le décédé et même et toute la tragédie à la James Smith Cree First Nation. Je veux remercier le GRC pour mobiliser tous les services, tous les appuis pour les familles. Ils sont notre priorité dans ce moment qui est tellement dur. Et je veux aussi remercier tous les Canadiens qui ont aidé les efforts de cette enquête. C'est un moment extrêmement difficile pour tout le monde qui habite à la James Smith Cree Nation, à Saskatchewan et même partout. Et nos pensées restent avec eux. Donc maintenant, je suis prêt pour les questions.
David Aiken, Global News. Thank you, Minister, for joining us at this hour of the day. It seemed watching that press conference just concluded in Saskatchewan that the RCMP made a point of telling us how they communicated with the public at risk, at the times they communicated with the public at risk, what they were doing to make sure that the at-risk population knew what was going on. And it was hard not to be struck, knowing what we know about Portapique and the Mass Casualty Commission, that it seemed that this institution, the RCMP, which has been under some criticism, may have learned a lesson. I'm not sure if that's fair to say, but I wonder if you could speak to the way the RCMP again communicated this particular incident as it worked through relative to what happened in Portapique.
Well, I do want to take a moment again to thank the RCMP who've been working 24/7 to find the whereabouts of Miles Sanderson and to continue to investigate the circumstances around the awful tragedies, the terrible tragedies which occurred at James Smith Cree Nation. Certainly, over the course of the last number of days, we've seen the RCMP use a number of different channels to communicate with the public, using alerts, using social media, providing press conferences, which was a way to not only keep the public informed, but equally to leverage anyone who might know about the whereabouts of Miles Sanderson. Obviously, there will continue to be questions, as I said in my opening remarks, about the circumstances involving the death of Miles Sanderson. There will continue to be questions about the circumstances which led to the stabbings in James Smith Cree Nation. And as I said yesterday, and I really do want to reiterate today, David, that this is an extraordinarily difficult time for the families. And, you know, having had the chance over the last number of months to meet with victims in these kinds of circumstances, there really is no way to impart among the rest of us what they're feeling right now. And I think the only thing that we can do is try to rally around them in the immediate community and as a country. And I think, you know, it is in these dark moments when, you know, we try to find the best of us. And I think that's certainly some small measure of relief that may be felt by the community today. But I'm under no illusions that that there's a long way, a long journey to go before there's any closure or any justice. And that's precisely why these ongoing investigations are important.
Sure. And I still want to probe sort of some of the bigger issues about the RCMP as an institution and its relationship with the Office of the Minister of Public Safety. In Portapique, it was a different Minister of Public Safety, and we know that the communications between the RCMP Commissioner and Minister Blair at the time have come up under some scrutiny. I wonder if you can speak at this point now to the tone, the tenor, any objectives your office had in communications with Commissioner Lucky. I'm assuming you have had some communications with Minister Lucky over the last couple of days. Can you speak to those and how they might have been different from what we know, what's on the record about communications between Minister Lucky and then Minister Blair when he held your portfolio?
Well, obviously, both me and my office were making best efforts to try and stay apprised of the latest developments of the investigation. I think it's important to both recognize that operational independence is a paramount value in respecting the role of police who carry out these investigations. We don't want elected politicians piercing behind that veil, and nor do we want to in any way interfere in ongoing investigations. And that is a principle that I respect, that my office respects, that our government respects, and always will be. At the same time, it is important that members of the government are available to take questions, as I am doing right now, so that we too can share as much information in real time as we can, so that Canadians can be assured that everything is being done to restore public safety in the community, to bring those who are responsible for any crimes that may have been committed to justice, and that is precisely what we have been doing over the last number of days.
Monsieur Mendicino, c'est pas très clair la façon dont l'arrestation s'est déroulée, puis encore moins comment Monsieur Sanderson est mort. La GRC dit qu'il est tombé en détresse, medical distress, mais ne veulent pas dire exactement, préciser les circonstances entourant la façon dont il est mort. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'on ne devrait pas avoir cette information-là?
Mais je sais qu'il y a plein de questions dans les circonstances, comment le suspect a décédé, et ça c'est exactement la raison qu'il y a une enquête qui sont en progrès, qui sont conduites par le service policier de Saskatchewan et un autre niveau d'examen. C'est un processus qui est indépendant de la GRC et y compris le gouvernement fédéral. C'est exactement comment notre processus fonctionne. Et à la fin de ce processus, on peut obtenir une mesure de transparence entre les circonstances. Mais maintenant, la priorité est la famille. Et le GRC sont là, le gouvernement fédéral sont là pour appuyer tout le monde qui a perdu un de ses proches.
Puis, quel rôle est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral peut jouer pour contribuer peut-être à cette enquête-là? Est-ce que ça se passe seulement vraiment du côté policier ou vous voulez peut-être avoir une enquête publique comme ce qui est arrivé à Portapique? Est-ce qu'on peut peut-être envisager ça?
Maintenant, le focus est nous jouons un rôle de partager l'information qu'on connaît, d'offrir d'appui à le gouvernement Saskatchewan. J'ai une bonne ligne de communication avec mon homologue, la ministre Tell. Et s'il y a des autres choses qu'on peut faire pour la communauté, la James Smith Cree Nation, nous serons là.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Just to circle back on Melanie's question, Mr. Sanderson died in police custody, and I hope you'll agree that requires a lot of transparency about exactly the circumstances. All we've heard from the RCMP, it was medical distress. That could run the range from anything from a drug overdose to a self-inflicted wound with a knife, possibly. What can you tell us more about that? that what actually happened tonight in Saskatchewan. I think people really, the RCMP is responsible for policing a great number of Canadians. I think we need to know exactly what happened, even if it's an initial report. What transpired there?
Well, I think you've gotten the initial report and the extent to which the RCMP
No.
can share information at this point. But I also do share the same curiosity. You have questions, we have questions. That's why there has been an independent investigation which has been commenced at the request of the RCMP to be conducted by Saskatoon Police, as well as another incident response group out of Saskatchewan. So there will be 2 levels of police who will be conducting an investigation into the circumstances around Miles Sanderson's death.
Do you really
And-
think medical distress is satisfactory explanation of what happened to this person?
Well, I think what's...
Everybody dies in medical distress. Like, could you narrow it down a little?
Well, again, I would not in any way want to preempt the process that has been undertaken, and it's entirely appropriate that when someone passes away or is deceased in the care and custody of a police service, that there is an independent investigation that is carried out to take a look at precisely what circumstances led to the deceased arriving in that state. And therefore, that's what will occur, and there will be transparency through that process. But in the meantime, my thoughts turn to the families. It is important that we answer those questions, Glenn. I acknowledge that. It is important that we acknowledge it for the families, for the community, for the whole country. It's important that we continue to investigate in the circumstances that led to the stabbings in the first place. And that is work that is being carried on by the RCMP in the community. And it is being advanced 24/7. It is being advanced with the assistance and the support of the community. And as I said in my opening remarks, it's also being advanced by the help and the support that we're receiving from Canadians. And that's one of the ways I think that we are rallying around this community, which has been so profoundly and tragically impacted by this terrible and awful incident. And it is a way in which I think we can show solidarity and unity with the country so that we can start the process of healing. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.